name is Mark, and for the past 15 years, I've been a ranger on the Appalachian Trail. Not the kind with a neat uniform and a visitor center booth, mind you. I'm one of the silent ones, the guys who patrol the deep, forgotten sections, the stretches where the only company you'll find are the shadows themselves. They call us the long walkers. Our job is simple: maintain the trail, assist hikers in distress, and most importantly, enforce the rules. Not the official rules you find on park brochures, but the real rules, the ones that keep you alive out here. When I started, I was a wide-eyed idealist, fresh out of some 2-bit environmental studies program, convinced I was going to be communing with nature and helping people find their inner peace. The mountains have a way of stripping that idealism right off you, like bark from a dead tree. You learn quickly that some peace is best left undisturbed, and some inner selves are better off remaining buried. My sector is a particularly nasty stretch, deep in the heart of Virginia, where the trail winds through ancient gnarled forests that haven't seen a lumberjack in a century. It's dense, it's isolated, and the cell service is non-existent. Perfect for those who want to disappear, and even better for those who want to make others disappear. The first rule, the most fundamental, the one I hammer into every newbie until their eyes glaze over, is this: never, under any circumstances, leave the marked trail. I don't care if you see a shortcut, a sparkling stream, or a glimmering artifact. You stay on the trail. It's not just about getting lost. It's about what finds you when you wander off. The woods out here, they're alive in a way you wouldn't understand. Not with animals and plants, but with something older, something that predates us. It waits just beyond the tree line for an invitation, a misstep, a moment of curiosity. I learned that one the hard way during my second year. A group of college kids, loud and full of themselves, decided to explore off-trail, looking for some rumored abandoned cabin. I found them 3 days later. Or rather, I found what was left. Not a scratch on them. No signs of struggle, but their faces, frozen in expressions of pure, unadulterated terror. Eyes wide, mouths agape. Whatever they saw, whatever got to them, it didn't just kill their bodies. It scoured their souls clean. Their gear was neatly laid out, untouched. No signs of a struggle. Just that look. I've seen that look more times than I care to admit since then. It's the look that haunts my nightmares. The second rule: always acknowledge the woods. This isn't about being polite. It's about showing respect. When you enter a new section, especially after dusk, you speak aloud. Evening woods. Good to be back, mountains. Something simple. It's an old tradition, passed down by the rangers who came before me, and by the few indigenous elders who still venture into these parts. They say it lets whatever resides here know you mean no harm. It's a courtesy, a recognition of something vast and powerful that tolerates our presence. But it's not foolproof. Sometimes something responds. I was on patrol once, deep into a moonless night, the kind where the trees swallow the stars. I'd said my piece, the usual greeting. And then, from somewhere deep within the forest, I heard it. A whisper. Not a human voice. Not an animal. Something different. It was like dry leaves skittering across granite, mixed with the sound of a sigh from a great ancient lung. It wasn't directed at me, but around me. A chilling affirmation that my words had been heard. I didn't stop, didn't look, just kept walking, faster, the cold sweat prickling my scalp. You learn to recognize the sounds that don't belong, the ones that make the hairs on your arms stand on end, even when there's no breeze. Rule number 3. Never camp alone in an unmarked area. There are designated campsites for a reason. They're cleared, they're maintained, and they offer a semblance of safety. Camping off trail, or even in an unofficial spot, is an invitation. For what? I couldn't tell you exactly, but I can tell you what happens. A few years ago, a grizzled old thru-hiker, a real character, ignored this rule. He'd done the trail 5 times over, thought he knew it all. He set up his tent in a small clearing, hidden by a thicket of rhododendrons, convinced he'd found his own private slice of heaven. I found his camp the next morning. His tent was shredded, but not torn. It looked as if it had been unzipped from the inside by something with too many fingers. His pack was there, untouched, but he was gone. No tracks, no blood, nothing. Just the silence of the woods, heavy and watchful. I still remember the chill in the air around that clearing, even in the midday sun. A cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Rule number 4, and this one is crucial for your sanity. Do not engage with the voices. Sometimes, deep in the woods, you'll hear them. Whispers, calls, sometimes even what sounds like human conversation. They'll sound distant, ethereal, like they're just beyond the edge of your hearing. They'll try to lure you, to make you curious. They'll call your name. They'll promise things or warn you of dangers. They're lies, all of them. I was once tracking a lost hiker, a young woman, for 3 days. The fog was thick, visibility was terrible, and I was exhausted. I started hearing her voice clear as day, calling for help. "Mark, over here, please." It sounded so real, so desperate. My heart pounded, relief washing over me. I started to move towards the sound, breaking rule number 1 by heading off trail. My focus narrowed on her voice. Just as I was about to plunge into a particularly dense thicket, something stopped me. A flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, a shadow that seemed to detach itself from a tree trunk and melt back into it. And then I heard it again. A different voice, closer, almost right next to my ear. A guttural growl that whispered, "She's not there, Mark. She's not there." I froze. The chill of that voice, the sheer malevolence in it, snapped me back to reality. The girl's voice continued, now tinged with a mocking laughter. I backed away slowly, my hand on my knife, and returned to the trail. I found the young woman later that day, further down the path, huddled and shivering, but alive. She swore she hadn't called out my name. Rule number 5. If you find something unnatural, leave it be. I'm talking about things that simply shouldn't exist. A child's toy in the middle of nowhere, pristine and unweathered. A single, perfectly preserved flower of a species not found in this region. A circle of stones too precise to be natural. These are offerings or perhaps markers. They are not for you to touch. I once saw a glade deep in a seldom visited ravine, where dozens of antique pocket watches hung from the branches of an ancient oak, all ticking in perfect unison. Their hands spun wildly, not keeping time, but simply revolving at impossible speeds. The air around them shimmered, as if seen through heat haze, even though it was a cold autumn day. The urge to touch one, to examine it, was almost overwhelming. But I remembered the rule. I walked past, didn't even break my stride, and never looked back. The sound of those countless ticking watches followed me for miles. Rule number 6. Never follow the lights. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, you'll see them. Little pinpricks of light, dancing through the trees, mimicking fireflies, or sometimes larger, pulsating glows, like a distant lantern. They beckon. They seem friendly, inviting. They are not. There was a group of campers, city folk, who ignored my warnings. They saw the lights, assumed it was another group of hikers, and decided to follow them to say hello. I found their campsite a week later. Everything was still there. Their tents, their sleeping bags, their food. But they were gone. Just gone. No trace. No struggle. The only thing I found was a single charred boot, sitting perfectly upright in the center of their campsite, as if placed there deliberately. The smell of ozone still hung heavy in the air. Rule number 7, respect the silence. The Appalachian Trail is a symphony of natural sounds. Birdsong, the rustle of leaves, the distant roar of a waterfall. But sometimes, especially at dawn or dusk, an unnatural silence descends. The birds stop singing, the wind dies down. The very air seems to hold its breath. This isn't a peaceful silence, it's a hungry one. When this silence falls, you stop talking, you stop moving. You find a place to hide, behind a thick tree, under a rock ledge, anywhere you can obscure yourself. You stay still, you breathe shallowly, and you wait. Wait until the normal sounds return. I've spent hours pressed against damp earth, listening to my own hammering heartbeat, while that deep, oppressive silence reigned. I don't know what hunts during those times, but I know it hears everything, and it's looking. Rule number 8, do not bring outside technology. GPS devices sometimes go haywire. Radios crackle with static and voices that aren't human. Cell phones lose signal even in places they should have it. The mountains don't like to be watched or listened to or mapped. They have their own ways. I once saw a drone, some high-tech contraption a tourist was flying, suddenly drop out of the sky like a stone. When I found it, the drone was intact, but all its internal circuitry was melted, fused into a grotesque slag. And then, slowly, one by one, the tiny surveillance cameras on his body began to weep a viscous black fluid. It was unsettling, to say the least. The mountain had rejected it. Rule number 9, never ever look for what's hiding. This is the hardest rule, because human nature is built on curiosity. You'll hear things in the night. Footsteps, too heavy for an animal, too light for a human. Growls that resonate from your teeth, not your ears. The rustle of something impossibly large moving through brush that shouldn't be able to support it. The scent of something ancient and foul, like wet earth and stagnant blood. Your instinct will be to look, to peer into the darkness, to shine your headlamp. Don't. Whatever is out there, it prefers to remain unseen. It gains power, or perhaps just takes pleasure, in your ignorance. If you see it, if you acknowledge its presence directly, you become a part of its world. And once you're in, there's no getting out. I was once awakened in my tent by a rhythmic scratching, just outside the fabric. It was low, insistent, like claws dragging over dry wood. Then it started to tap, a slow, deliberate pattern. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. It was close. Too close. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to zip open the tent and see what it was. But I remembered the rule. I lay there, rigid, heart pounding, listening to the impossible tapping. It went on for what felt like hours. Then, a low, wet snuffle, right by my head, and the distinct sound of something inhaling deeply, as if smelling the air. I could feel its breath, cold and stale, on the thin nylon of my tent. I squeezed my eyes shut, not daring to move, not daring to even breathe. Finally, after an eternity, the sounds retreated, fading into the pre-dawn gloom. I didn't sleep a wink that night, and when the sun finally rose, I packed my camp faster than I ever had and hiked until I was miles away. I never looked back. Rule number 10, the final rule, and perhaps the most terrifying. Sometimes the trail changes. You might walk a section you've walked 100 times, and suddenly a familiar landmark is gone. A tree, a rock formation, even a stream might have vanished, replaced by something new, something wrong. A path that was once clear might be overgrown, or a new, tempting path might appear where there was none before. When this happens, you don't question it. You don't try to rationalize it. You just keep walking, following the new path if it leads you back to the main trail, or finding an alternate route if it doesn't. You accept the change because to fight it, to try to force the trail back to what it was, is to invite something truly horrifying. It means the mountains are awake, and they are playing. Last winter, during a heavy snow, I was on a routine patrol of a section of trail near an old, forgotten cemetery. I've walked that stretch countless times. I know every curve, every dip. But as I rounded a bend, the path simply twisted. It turned sharply, leading into a dense, unfamiliar stand of pines. The air grew heavy, the usual sounds of the forest muted. And then I saw it. Hanging from the branches of the pines were what looked like human teeth, strung together like morbid wind chimes, clicking softly in the barely there breeze. And below them, fresh tracks in the snow, too large for any animal I knew, and too regular to be natural. They led deeper into the pines, into the darkness. The trail had changed. I swallowed hard, my heart a lead weight in my chest. I didn't follow the tracks. I didn't even look at the teeth for too long. I turned back, found an older, fainter deer trail, and walked parallel to the changed path for hours, until I rejoined a section I recognized. When I returned to that spot a week later, the teeth were gone, the new path was gone, and the trail was exactly as it had been before. But I know what I saw. The mountain had just been showing me a glimpse, a warning. So that's my life out here. 15 years of walking the line between the known and the unknowable. I've seen things that would shatter a sane man's mind, and I've survived by following the rules, most of the time. The Appalachian Trail isn't just a path through the woods. It's a living, breathing entity with its own desires, its own inhabitants, and its own terrifying set of laws. People come out here seeking solace, adventure, a connection to nature. They find all of that, and sometimes, if they're not careful, they find something else entirely, something that watches from the shadows, that whispers from the trees, that waits for a single misstep. I'm due back out on patrol tomorrow. The forecast calls for heavy fog. I'll pack my gear, check my knife, and say my silent prayers. And when I step onto that ancient path, I'll acknowledge the woods, I'll respect the silence, and I'll remember the rules. Because out here, in the heart of the Appalachian Trail, the rules aren't just suggestions. They're the only thing standing between you and whatever is waiting in the dark. And sometimes they're not even enough. Good luck out there, folks. And if you ever decide to hike the Appalachian Trail, remember my rules. Your life might depend on it. And if you see a lone ranger, a man with haunted eyes and a worn pack walking faster than he should be, don't ask him what he's seen. Just nod, keep your head down, and stay on the trail. Because he knows. He knows what's out there. And he knows what it does to those who don't follow the rules.